one's live, I think.
Test.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is everybody else okay? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Sorry for the short delay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, May 15th Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And we also have one new item of business, and it's a verbal report from myself on the scheduled date for the Community Parks Advisory Commission Orientation Workshop. Seeing nothing else, I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda, please. Motion for the agenda, approval of the agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Like now, for the adoption of the minutes, Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of May 1st. Moved, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on now, any business arising from the minutes? And turn now to the public input period. Is there anybody in the gallery that wishes to speak on any item that's on the agenda? You can come forward to the microphone and you have 3 minutes. You just turn it on, press the button there. Welcome.
Thank you, Lori. I'm Stephen Burkhardt, strata developer and owner of 2 lots adjacent to the applicants. As a brief history, I first applied for DP in 2006, but never exercised a PLA due to the economic downturn. I've been at a suitable development for more than 12 years. I later applied for rezoning to CR as per the Area D official community plan, which I unfortunately had to retract due to opposition from wealthy neighbors. My third DP in 2016 was for large homes in line with the upscale neighborhood. I spent more than $100,000 per lot to develop it to the highest standards, only marginally commercially viable with so few lots. But I did it anyway to do justice to this special large parcel. For my arguments opposing the variance, see my letter of last November 13th. The statement by Mr. Singer of April 16th, quote, the strata membership have not expressed any concern about the variance request is clearly false since my letter is a public record. Development of Lot 5 is becoming the opposite of my intention to preserve this unique area and its rural residential character since it's turning into a light industrial site mostly covered in gravel, buildings, vehicles, and trailers exploding the reasonable bounds of a home-based business. An increased footprint would further exacerbate the situation. Ms. Hovey told me that such variances were normally not granted by the board, and I would have the opportunity for verbal input at an upcoming meeting, so I subscribed to the CVRD notifications. Yet, when contacting her last month, she told me this meeting had just taken place the day before, but had not been published, thus preventing me from giving my verbal input. The APC then voted against the variance. I could not get a satisfactory answer from Ms. Hovey as to why she had recommended to approve it, despite this. I have serious concerns about the enormous 5,600 square foot size without any buffer to the Strata Road, adjacent lots, and facing the Cherry Point Kingscote Road intersection. A 2.5 acre lot should provide plenty of space to accommodate a normal-sized rural residence without expanding the prescribed footprint by a considerable 23%. Myself and a direct neighbor are also concerned about the commercial nature of the lot with planned space for 10 vehicles, quote, with 1 or 2 outside, as the applicant had stated at the APC meeting. Currently on the lot are several large signed commercial vehicles and trailers, 2 trailer campers, several sheds, plumbing supplies, quads, an enormous log pile, none of which is allowed under the Stratus building scheme or is a normal aspect of an environmentally attractive residential lot in our neighborhood. The plan shows trees surrounding the lot, most of which have been felled, with the 2-story accessory building fully visible in the cleared lot from the public road and 0 buffer on the Strata Road and upper end. It looks like all buildings and the expanded pond are overflow draining onto Cherry Point Road. I made sure the entire development was self-draining, i.e. the Strata Road and my own perimeter drained house. In order to accommodate this large facility and cars, a second access is planned, which is not likely to be granted by the Strata, since it requires a 3/4 vote that I will oppose with my 40% share. This highly visible development is degrading the neighborhood and bringing down my and other owners' property values. For these reasons, I oppose granting this variance.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I was looking at. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on any input?
I'll just say a few things, just regarding a few things like that. Do I got to press and?
Are you the applicant?
Yes.
You will have a chance to speak.
Oh, later on?
When the application comes
Okay,
forward.
I'll
But
wait
you
till
could
then.
also speak now if you'd
I
like.
can wait till then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on now to, I'm seeing no other people at the podium, and we'll move on now to correspondence. We have C1, grant and aid request, Electoral Area F. Mr. Barry.
Electoral Area F, grant and aid request for Lake Cowichan Secondary, and the recommendation that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Area F in the amount of $500 be provided to Lake Cowichan Secondary for a bursary for a graduating student residing in Electoral Area F.
Been moved, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on now to C2, grant and aid Electoral Area F.
Also from Area F, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Area F in the amount of $6,000 be provided to Kaikou's Volunteer Fire Department to assist in the provision of services to West Cowichan Lake area.
It's been moved, second. All in favor? Any opposed? I apologize, I didn't see your hand. Sure.
So I didn't know there was a Kaikou's volunteer fire department. Can you maybe give us a little color on that? Director Morrison?
Director Morrison, just an update on the,
Certainly, Madam Chair. There's an association of individuals that operate and respond to emergency situations and fires in the Kaikous area. The west end of Cowichan Lake, they are not a CVRD fire department. They are unable to get the required authorization to create a function due to the ownership makeup of that area. So for, a few decades now, they've been operating on a shoestring budget and providing life-saving services to people who travel around the lake.
okay, so that has been moved and seconded. It's been approved, and we'll move on to C3.
C3 also from Area F, that we recommended to the board that grant and aid from Area F in the amount of $7,500 be provided to Cowichan Lake District Chamber of Commerce to support the 2019 Cowichan Lake Visitor Business Center services.
Moved, second. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
Number-
C4.
And number 4 from Area F, recommended to the board that a grant and aid from Area F in the amount of $1,235 be provided to Cowichan Lake District Chamber of Commerce to support the sponsorship of the Visitor Center Mobile Service Unit through June 2021.
Just keep your hand up there, Director Morrison. It's been moved and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
Number-
C5.
From Area F, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid from Area F in the amount of $750 be provided to Cowichan Lake and River Stewardship Society to support their 10-year anniversary revisioning event this fall.
Moved, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. C6.
From Area F, that grant and aid recommended to the board, Area F, in the amount of $1,250 be provided to Honeymoon Bay Community Society to support the society's hosting of events in 2019, including Bay Days Car Show and Shine 500 and Potluck Dimmer Christmas Craft Fair Canada Day 750.
Moved, second. All in favor? Any opposed? No questions on the pot dimmer lick thing? C7. No, it's not. C7.
That'd be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Area F in the amount of $1,250 be provided to Honeymoon Bay Community Society to support the society's carpet bowling tournament hosted at the Honeymoon Bay Hall.
Moved, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. C8.
That be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Area F in the amount of $1,500 be provided to Vancouver Island Wind Sports Society to support the Windfest Nitnat Lake event on July 26 to 28, 2019.
It's been moved, second, and we want, Director Morrison would like to speak to it.
Thank you. This organization has really stepped up and is creating a destination event at Nitnat Lake. It's really becoming an international go-to event, and they've approached the regional grant and aids, which they received some dollars. My understanding was they were targeting $5,000 in grants. This, if it's supported, will bring them up to about 3,000. Most of these dollars are going to safety and security for the participants in this, and I would just like to encourage, as some electoral area directors have done in the past, that if they had some surplus funds in their community grants and aid, that anyone wanting to contribute to help to make this event a safe success would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We did see the video on this as well, have we not? A few times? Oh, and they're coming back. Very cool. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on now to information.
There are two information items, Madam Chair, from Area D, the Advisory Planning Commission minutes of April the 4th, and from Area A to C, Joint Advisory Planning Commission minutes from May 2nd.
Any questions? Seeing none, that was for information. Moving on to R1, Building Inspection Report from April 2019. Welcome, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's for information only. The report is in your packet, and I thought I would be here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this information item? Seeing none.
Oh, somebody's going to ask.
Director Acton.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm
welcome.
just curious about this report, if it's time-consuming, or because it actually doesn't produce a lot of discussion, or I think, I'm not sure what the original intent was of this report. I think probably someone said, oh gee, it'd be really great to get this, and now we've got it, but it doesn't seem to deliver, have high deliverables on that. So, question to Mr. McDonald.
Yes. Seeking direction from you, I could provide the report that I used to provide, where there was a presentation, and maybe some more information if you find value in that.
Director Acton.
I guess. Well, I'm not sure what the original intent was, but I'm assuming it was because you were quite busy and you're showing the growth and you're trying to portray what's going on in the district. So if you feel that would be a better more informative, I would speak to the committee, but that sounds like a interesting plan, as long as it's not taking away from high valuable work for you.
Okay. Director Morrison.
Thank you, and I think that some of the reporting that Mr. McDonald has done in the past has been informative, but once you've had one or two of them, you can sort of self-interpret the information that he's providing, and I'm quite happy to continue to to receive this, and of course, if I need any clarification, I can certainly reach out to him, but I just want to perhaps ask Mr. McDonald if he can ever remember a time when Area F wasn't in last place, and I'm actually in third place, in
this was coming.
third or fourth place in values, so pretty happy about that.
I knew I should add a slide for
Yeah,
that.
there we go. Gotta put a plug in somewhere. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I think the report, I think following the trends on the building permits is a good idea, but I'm thinking probably only every 3 months is a report's required.
Thank you. Director Kuhn. Okay. So, did we give any direction at all? So, some people would like more information, and you could access it. Mr. McDonald.
A suggestion, would you like a quarterly report that was more in-depth, as opposed to a monthly one? You would get the same monthly report in the packet, but I could do a presentation as
Sounds
a
good.
quarterly.
I'm looking to the committee. How do you feel? I'm seeing nodding. That sounds great.
That's,
Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't want to create more work
No.
for you. I know you're busy, so I guess if you have something that you're already producing, perhaps for, upper management, then that might be something that's interesting to bring back. Or even when you just present this, highlighting some of the things that, of what we're seeing, I guess would be something. I look to Mr. McDonald to actually decide, because I don't want to
Sure.
create more work for you.
Mr. McDonald.
yeah, if I can, I'll add something actually, how's this for that works. I actually did write some notes down in case we had some questions. One thing that may be of interest was that I noticed in the month that we did 179 inspections, which took 4,157 kilometers worth of driving to go to. So if that would give some insight to the directors that the building department has been very busy. Even the numbers that you've seen in that report were, the numbers are a little bit down from last year. The amount of time that they're spending on the road is keeping them, all the inspectors, very busy.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Kuhn?
Yeah, I wonder what information would the director from Area B be looking forward to? I mean, it's one thing to say, well, the report isn't good enough, but it's quite another to say, I would like to see this and this and this and this. And this is kind of vague, maybe you, yeah, so anyway, maybe that should be sorted out.
So, Director Smith, then back to Director Acton.
I find these reports very informative. The details that you just came out with as to how many inspections were done, I think that would be something that would be of interest also. But I do enjoy these reports. I do find them very informative, and I'd like to see them on a monthly basis. So if we could continue with this, I think that it's a very quick item for us to look at. And then also anyone who, of the general public that likes to read our agendas and the attachments, it's a very informative document for them. It gives them a clear indication what's going on in their community within a month of just issuing these permits.
So what I am hearing is that monthly reports in our agenda, but quarterly if you would like some more in depth. Is that what I'm, Director Acton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I was just questioning the purpose of these reports, the original intent. I actually don't find they tell me a lot. Like, if I was to look at this as far as like, how is business going, if we want to, like, then it doesn't actually, to me, it doesn't tell me a great story. It's just giving me a bunch of numbers, but, so that's, I was wondering, like, are we being efficient? Are we working well here? Are things, like, it doesn't tell me any of these things. It doesn't actually tell me a lot about the CVRD. So that's, and I was curious about, does this take a lot of work for Mr. McDonald to produce? Because if it does, I don't see that it actually delivers a lot.
I'm seeing around the room that they prefer.
If people
I'm
are
seeing
happy with
nodding,
it,
they're
I just-
happy.
I
I'm
don't-
seeing the general consensus that monthly they would like this, and maybe in more in-depth, quarterly, if you would like to see more of the 179 inspections and the kilometers traveled. And I go to Director Sam and then Director Morrison.
Thank you. I would like the quarterly as well as Mr. McDonald offered, particularly just to, maybe quarterly is a bit more relevant for trends rather than just the month-to-month variations. So I think that would be great. With the presentation, a
Yeah.
little short one. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you know, I think that having Mr. McDonald bring more information on a quarterly basis is appropriate if there's, you know, bumps and changes in the data. You can tell a lot from just looking at this, you know, some of the year over year, especially on the very colorful bar graph on page 2, and that helps with trends to see where we're at in comparison to previous years. So I think that as opposed to creating more busy work for staff, this looks to be a format that can be easily produced on a monthly basis, and would suggest that if there are directors that are looking for more information, that they submit some requests for additional data that Mr. McDonald could provide on a quarterly update.
Thank you. So I think you have a little direction,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald, and thank
do.
you very much.
Okay.
Moving on now to R2, I'd like to welcome up Ms. Covey.
Thank you. Thank you. Before you, we have file number DVP 18D26, which is an application for a variance to parcel coverage for a single detached dwelling. The subject property is located off of Cherry Point Road near the southeastern boundary of Electoral Area D. The property is designated rural residential and is zoned rural residential 1 zone. The proposed use of the property for a single detached dwelling with an accessory dwelling and an accessory shop is consistent with the OCP designation, and the use is permitted in the zoning bylaw. The applicant has requested a variance to the maximum permitted parcel coverage from 500 meters squared to 615 meters squared. The existing buildings and proposed buildings otherwise comply with the zoning bylaw, including in terms of setback and height. The total lot size is 1 hectare, and you can see the proposed site plan. Existing already on the site is a small dwelling and an accessory dwelling. An accessory building. The small dwelling is sized to be under 90 meters square, so it can be considered an accessory dwelling once the main dwelling is constructed. You can see here that the accessory dwelling and accessory shop are largely complete. The shop is on the right and the dwelling is on the left. On the left side, you also see another accessory building that is intended to be removed. Here are drawings of the proposed main dwelling, designed to match the existing dwellings that you saw in the previous picture. This is a photo of the site from above. The tree line along the top is the edge of the property boundary. This is a photo of the site from the road. As you can see, when you're coming, I believe, east on Cherry Point Road, you can see the strata development, and then when you're traveling from the west, it's largely screened by vegetation and the slope of the road. In terms of the input received, the file was referred to the Advisory Planning Commission, and they did not recommend approval of the file. Letters were also distributed to adjacent property owners, and 3 letters were returned, 1 opposing the variance and 2 in support of the variance. The recommendation before you is that the application be approved, and I know, as you also know, the applicant is here today.
Does the applicant wish to add anything?
Sure.
Come to the,
I'd just like to add that as far as Mr. Burkhardt said about the settlement pond, it's all, I had a geotech engineer come out, size it all, and have all the things approved, and I plan to do exactly what he says and have it all approved, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. As far as him saying that there's issue with the shop and the site of it, once the house is constructed, it's constructed in a way that you won't even barely see it from the road. It'll be hidden behind the house. And what other issues? And then as far as the trees, I took a few extra trees down because in the windstorm, a lot of the tops were snapping. They were kind of already dead, so I removed them, and I plan when I landscape to put hedging in to keep privacy. Pretty much that's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Turn to committee. Director Morrison, and then Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move option 2, that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 18D26 be denied.
Is there a seconder for that? It's been moved and seconded. Director Nicholson?
Well, I actually had a question.
Yeah, you can have a question.
So I'm a little, in RR1, I think I understand that lots need to be 1 hectares or larger. And I can't understand the rationale for the statement that we would limit coverage to 20% or 500 meters squared, whichever is less. So it doesn't seem to me that it would ever be you could ever do 20%. So is that true? Have I got this right? I don't do numbers well.
Through
Ms.
you,
Covey?
Chair. Oh, thank you. I did take down some notes on this, and you are correct that 500 meters squares equals 20% of 2,500 meters squared, which is less than 1 hectare. There are occasions where existing lots from previous eras exist that are smaller than the minimum lot size, and in those cases, the 20% would be triggered.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on now to, and that will go to the board. I don't have the next board. 22nd of May. At 6:30 is the 22nd of May? 1:30. Thank you. Moving on now to our, where are we? R3. Development application update from Mr. Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. At the April 17th Electoral Area Services Committee meeting, a discussion was taking place about the backlog of applications that currently exist within the department. Discussion also took place about the fact that there may be a need to move people from our long-range planning or community planning division to development services division in order to take care of these applications and the backlog that existed. At that point, it was suggested that perhaps a report should be brought forward to the committee outlining our existing situation and whether there was a need to do that or not. And the report in front of you today tries to give a little background to that situation as far as the number of applications that we currently have and what they are. Appendices are attached for your information, which outline the differences in numbers between rezonings, development permits, development variance permits, etc. And those are there for your information. I also tried to outline some of the changes in the processes that we've gone through in order to speed the process up somewhat. We're limited to a certain extent because of bylaws and the provincial regulations, but there are opportunities to amend processes, and we have done that. For example, increasing the number of development permits that are forwarded to the general manager for approval, straight to my office for approval if we can do that. And there's a few other things that we've done there in order to try and speed that process up. This discussion around the long-range planning initiatives that we've got on the go at the present time is interesting because it's felt that in the long term, it pays to stick with that long-range planning program, especially the harmonization and modernization of our bylaws. And because, as you can see in the little write-up that I've included, there's significant benefit gained by proceeding with that initiative to its end in order to streamline processes, reduce processes, and bring all the bylaws under one umbrella. It saves a lot of time for staff in processing and applicants in that they, or developers in that they wouldn't have to go through certain processes. So it's definitely suggested that that program continue on. However, I go on to talk about resources, and this is probably the key aspect of the backlog. As you can see from the start of that section, the turnover rate in this Development Services Department and generally in the Land Use Services Department has been significant, to say the least, in the last 3-4 years. As you can see from some of the numbers there, that's unprecedented, the number of terminations, retirements, leaves, whether it be illness or education leaves, maternity leaves, etc., that have had a huge impact on staffing resources and the ability to undertake the work that's needed in order to get rid of the backlog. However, there is hope, I'm hoping, and I've tried to outline that in the conclusion, in that we have, for example, and I'll just roughly give you an update from what's in the report, but we've moved staff from parks, economic development, and long range to our development services in order to work on applications. We've also just recently got the services of our planning technician back, who's been on leave, so that will certainly help not only the application processing, but also with our front counter work that has been put on hold to a certain extent during certain times of the day in order to allow more work to take place by our planners on applications, etc. It's also nice to know that we're in the process. We've hired a new planner for the Development Services Division. That planner started in early May. We have another planner starting at the end of May or early June, which is dedicated to the long-range planning or community planning division, but we'll be starting on application processing to begin with until we get rid of the backlog. We're also in the process of hiring additional people in order to take care of other issues within the department. And with the new planning technician that's being proposed to start in the next month or so, we'd hopefully get our front counter service back into order, which is a real benefit to us because that's your first impact or contact with the regional district, and it's nice not to have to tell people that they have to come back at a different time in order to at least talk to a planner. Other things that are taking place, you passed a resolution or a motion in December which gave a list of criteria for prioritizing applications, ones that have the most regional economic benefit to go first, enforcement actions second, and other applications last. We have done that. We've got a list of priorities that first priority, second priority, that have been delegated to staff to undertake in that order, and we're proceeding with that. I don't think we've seen the benefits of that just yet, but that is on the books as the applications work through the process. There are other things that we're doing to try and speed the process up, Madam Chair. However, that's sort of a brief outline, and in general and in conclusion, I would hope that no direction is given to change what we're doing in our long-range planning function. We should continue on with the harmonization and modernization, but in the meantime, we're trying to do whatever we can in order to process as many of the applications as we can in a timely fashion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I have Director Acton. Question for Mr. Anderson?
Maybe just a comment?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I think your report was very thorough. It's unfortunate it had to take time out of the planning department to do it, but I hope that it is reassuring for this committee that we can stand united on what you've suggested. And I think it was initially a panic response, a little bit, of people leaving and management changing, so thank you for stepping in and all you've done and for producing this report. So is there a motion to accept the report?
There is a recommendation.
Okay, I would move the recommendation.
Mr. Barry, could you read the recommendation?
That an update on processing development applications be provided to the Electoral Area Services Committee in November 2019.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I have, Director Salmon, and I'll put myself on the list. Question.
Thank you for the report. And I noticed we'll get an update in November, is the plan, 6 months. Just wondering, what metric how will we know where they're making progress? What are you counting to?
Can I get you to pull your microphone or speak right into it or pull it forward to you? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, are you counting number of applications in process or number completed or number in the queue?
If, what we've done is, and this has just taken place in the last little while, is start tracking the applications as they're going through. I've tried to give you a rough estimate as to the number of weeks, which is the development permits that are approved by a general manager, versus the number of months that an average application takes place, for example, to go through a rezoning, which is up to 2 years. And that is included in your appendix. So we're doing more tracking, trying to figure out whether we're gaining or losing, and that has not completely kicked in, as we need to go through more applications to get a better understanding of those weeks or months that are going to take place. But you'll probably see that, and it's hoped that at the November meeting, when the report comes back, that it'll be a little clear. First of all, whether the backlog is being reduced, and also what those numbers or weeks of processing are.
Thank you.
Did you have your hand up, Director Nicholson? Director Nicholson, it's on already.
Thank you. I just
You
wanted,
yeah,
I
pull it,
wanted,
maybe pull it forward towards you a little bit. Great, thank you.
I wanted to say that I thought this was a really helpful and good report, excellent report, actually. And I really applaud that we're tracking things now. It's going to be very useful moving forward. And I'm wondering if we're doing anything in particular to deal with the turnover issue.
We're trying. We've filled a number of positions, and I'm hopeful that everyone's health is maintained. So that would certainly help the situation. But no, Madam Chair, you can only do so much. There are opportunities all over the place for people that are in these professional positions. So we do what we can. We try and create a good work environment that is fulfilling for people. And so therefore, there are certain issues that you have no control over, and others you do. So the ones we do have control, we're trying to take care of that. And others, all we can do is wish our staff the best as they move forward with, their professional careers, and that's all we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, oh yes, Mr. Crothers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Additionally, there are some systemic issues that I think we can look at in terms of the various levels that we have within our planning ranks, and there's some potentially some problematic issues around qualifications that may be causing some of our staff to be looking for other opportunities. So when we have our new general manager in place, we're going to be having a look at those various levels within our planning department and seeing if we can maybe do a little bit of compression so that there's some natural career paths within the organization and would allow us to retain some of our staff.
Would this be connected to any job sharing? We don't have any job sharing currently.
Not currently, but that's certainly something that we're not opposed to looking at when those opportunities arise. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Crothers. I also noticed the last two electoral area services, and I don't know if the backlog, but I think we only had 2 applications on the last one, and this is just one on this one. So is this just the lull? We will be getting more applications, because it seems like the last couple of meetings, there's very few applications that are ready for us.
Madam Chair, that's really hard to say. Certainly since I've been here, I've noticed that as well. Given the backlog, where are the numbers? However, you got to keep in mind that each application is different. We've got a lot of applications that are going out to APCs and through public processes and whatnot. And so I think this is simply the lull or the ebb and flow of applications as we go through them. and is not a long-term trend.
Thank you. Director Salmon?
Yeah.
Yeah, great, maybe pull it forward. It's very awkward with our computers. Great.
Just, I was wondering about the working at home option. I think we talked about that a little bit before, if that might help with the retention and attraction of new staff.
I'm not sure. Mr. Crothers, has that been an option?
Yeah, remote working is something we certainly have been looking at. It's not appropriate for all circumstances, but there are some circumstances where we can look at it. It's in public service. It can be challenging, given the interaction required with members of the public, with the work that many of our staff do. But again, like job sharing, it's not something that we're opposed to, and I've actually have our HR department is looking at potential policy and guidelines around opportunities for working remotely.
Thank you so much. Mr. Anderson?
Madam Chair, just a final comment, and I know we come to the board and you look and you see the backlog and you have phone calls from applicants and they want these things to go through faster. However, staff hear that, and it's not as though they're ignoring it. They're doing the best job they can. They're under a lot of pressure. I talked to one director this morning or this afternoon about, meetings with applicants, potential applicants. It takes time out of a day to inform the public as to, or the developers and the developer community, what they have to go through. And so that takes away, they're well aware of the situation. So, I'm not sure how much more we can do. One of the issues with turnover is stress. And so therefore, you've got to find a happy medium between pushing and allowing them to do their jobs. So the only thing I could see, and as I've concluded here, is the best way of handling this right now is what we've done is trying to streamline the process. We've hired some more people because you can't push people much harder than what we're doing, because suddenly they're off on stress leave, and with many of them rightfully so. They're dealing with a lot of people in a lot of situations. So I just want to say that I appreciate the work that the staff is doing here, and help is on the way, but it takes time to get those people into place as well.
Thank you so much. Did you find, I have another question on the developer's handbook. Has that been a good resource or tool, or have we tracked it at all?
Madam Chair, it is a good resource. It's very user-friendly. It looks good, and to the developers that are here all the time, it means nothing to them. To those that are first to the podium, it means a lot, and they do use it, and most of the people look at it on the web and whatnot. So the general reaction has been relatively positive, and but we do, as is noted here, we do direct applicants to take a look at that, go to the web, see what's going through, see what causes the delays, make sure you have complete applications, which is another issue. I should note that when people come in, they hand their applications, sometimes they're not complete. And it takes a little to and fro in order to complete them, but in their minds, they've already made their application. And so 2 months later, we're the ones being blamed for the lack of action when the application hasn't been completed. So it's all a part of a evolution and making sure people are educated.
Thank you. Director Morrison. And I'll
Yeah,
call the question.
thank you, and I think that last point from Mr. Anderson is pertinent in that, I often get calls from people that are wondering, what's taking so long with their application, and you find out that this document was missing and they were short with that, or something wasn't completed, and we have to be a little bit of perhaps gatekeepers for staff to some extent. And the other thing I think that I hope is having an effect, and a number of directors around the table have spoken of this, is as a committee and on the board, that we're consistent in our decision making, and that we're doing our work, we're preparing, we're reading our material, we're showing up prepared, and we're being consistent in the decision making. And I think that bodes well for the future, and I think staff, when they see the consistency that we're delivering in our decision making, that probably inspires a little bit of confidence, and I think it's getting better as the term progresses, so I hope it does.
Good points, Director Morrison. Director Salmon.
Just on that incomplete application question, I'm sure you have something, but is there system where someone comes to the front counter, someone goes over and tries to check whether it's complete?
Yes, there is a checklist. We try and get at those applications as soon as we can after they've been submitted. We're looking at instituting one of our new planners has made mention of this, a need for a meeting with an applicant when they submit their application, to actually sit down, flip through the pages, make sure the signatures are there, make sure the various pieces of documentation are in line, and that would probably go a long way to saving the to and fro that takes place over weeks. Because a person can submit an application, doesn't necessarily mean it's looked at immediately. So what happens is 3 weeks later, a staff member looks at it, sees there's a problem, they get back to the applicant, you've already lost 3 weeks. So we're looking at that opportunity to maybe have an applicant meeting when they submit applications.
Director Smith?
Thank you very much, through the chair, for putting this report together. It is definitely a clear indication for us to see where we're at. As I spoke to you this morning, in that Area G is definitely a small area, and we don't have very many applications in line here. So as we went through the triage system in December, making a decision for that, it makes sense to do the triage system, but it also brings smaller areas that have few applications into a different level. And I think it's really important that they be reflected as we move along, so that some areas aren't left behind just because they only have 3 or 4 applications in, compared to some of the areas that have quite a few.
Thank you. We'll have Mr. Barry, could you please read the resolution?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is a motion on the floor, which is that an update on processing development applications be provided to the Electoral Area Services Committee in November 2019.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on now to, why am I getting confused here? R4. Director Morrison, verbal report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick reminder to everyone, and I don't have the date in front of me, but this is just an early reminder that resolutions that this committee may wish to put forward through to UBCM, we should be starting to work on that now. These are the ones that would be outside of those that have gone through our area association, ABICC. If there's any specific topics, areas that, and I would suggest new and emergent type of issues. I know that there's some real issues about governments wanting to begin to address internet security type of issues and the likes, and whether or not that's something that's our jurisdiction, I think lending our support, and any other issues of an important nature to local government, if it's if someone has some thoughts, I think bring it forward to the next committee meeting, and we may or may not have any resolutions go forward, but now's the time to be thinking about it. I think the deadline is in June, and
Yeah,
we
sooner
don't.
the better, because I know that we think of things later on, because we think, oh, it's September. We don't need them, but it is. Very
Exactly,
important.
it's September, and I think that we should give us the opportunity to craft good resolutions that have good solid background and data behind them if we're going to put something forward.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Moving on now to R5, which is a verbal report from myself as the chair. Cancellation of the June 5th Electoral Area Committee services, because most of us will be away. So I'm just looking for that check-in with everyone. Director Salmon?
So, no, not yet, just because we'll already be missing, there won't be one in 2 weeks, right? It's the 20, there would be one normally
Mr.
in 2
Berry?
weeks.
Madam Chair, because of the 5 weeks in May, if you cancel, the next meeting would be June 19.
So I'm concerned that's a long time, especially we're just talking about the backlog.
Yeah, I would be concerned having 5 alternate directors voting on an application. I think it would be very, you know,
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I would like to see things moving along as well, but I think it would be fairer, but it's up to the committee. I'm seeing that there's only a few people that will be here. I have.
But is there
Director-
not an option to do the 29th meeting that we normally, the 5-week in May that we normally? It'll be gone even then?
Yes, that's when FCM starts.
Okay.
So we tried to, we've discussed this, bringing it back here. So I'm seeing, Mr. Barry.
Madam Chair, if the committee wishes, the resolution you would need to pass is that the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting scheduled for June the 5th be canceled.
So it's been moved, seconded. Any discussion? Director Nicholson?
Well, I'm just wondering if we have any idea how many applications we would expect to have on that agenda. If it's going to be a light one like today, it makes sense. If we're starting to get things coming through, we don't want to hold things up. So, any ideas?
Mr.
Madam-
Anderson?
Madam Chair, that list has not been put together at this point.
Okay, Director Acton, do you have a comment?
Well, I'll be back. I can have a meeting, but. But could we maybe move it to the 6th, to the Thursday, or it has to be on a Wednesday?
It's still not gonna work for a lot of people.
Like, that's a
Director
long
Morrison?
time.
I think it's, in my view, there's gonna be, look, when we go to events like FCM, where, like, it's a lot of work in my mind. You would have to be reading and preparing your agenda on the weekend that we're away. So, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm suggesting that, as long as we know that we could have a fairly full agenda at the subsequent meeting, then, we show up prepared for that meeting,
Yeah.
and we may have a long one, and
And
it shouldn't be an
likely-
issue.
Likely could be.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna, Director Acton,
I actually think we should have that meeting, so if it goes to Monday, I'm flying back on the Monday, so I guess everybody else is flying back on the Tuesday. You have like 6 hours to work on, I don't think, I think it's too long to go, and it's certainly, we'll have enough time to prepare.
I've got Director Sam, and then I'm gonna call the question.
I'll be back as well. I'm just wondering how many people will be here?
So that's it. And we, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so we're moving on now to unfinished business. So unfinished business 1. Application, Mr. Barry?
Yeah, and unfinished business item number 1, development application procedures and fees bylaw. There is a report from the Development Services Division, and this was referred from your April 24th meeting.
Can I just move it?
Director Morrison?
Can I move that recommendation?
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this? Director Nicholson?
Well, I was just curious about this permit and the notion that, I didn't have a chance to read it all. But the number 22, if Wooden Road is to be developed in the future, the house will need to be moved out of the right-of-way.
This is the UB1,
UB1.
Oh, sorry, wrong one?
so it's just procedures.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And fees
I'm
and
with-
policy,
I'm with the
okay?
procedures.
Okay, so it's been moved
Sorry.
and seconded. Director Salmon, and I need to read it. Just a second, we're gonna read the recommendation.
The bylaw 4267, development application procedures and fees bylaw, be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption.
Thank you. Director Salmon?
Yeah, just to clarify, so on the cost recovery part of it, am I right? So even though inflation's been up 39% since the last time we raised the fees, we're just proposing inflation, I'm a bit lost, but we're going to go from 15% cost recovery to 19% cost recovery. Is that what we're
Correct.
proposing? Could we, what would be the downside to boosting that more toward 25%?
Mr. Anderson?
I'm not exactly sure of all the background. This was started before I got here. The number is totally up to you. That was felt as being a modest increase, which the community could handle. However, we take your direction if you're desirable of going higher, and would like to defend that within the public realm.
A follow-up, Director Salmon?
Well, I think it should go higher, at least if inflation was up roughly 40%, I think we could consider something like that as a fee increase. If anyone else.
I just have Director Morrison, then Director Nicholson. Director Morrison.
I think a fair bit of discussion went into this initially when this report was brought forward, and I think that it's not just the cost recovery percentage figure. It's our viability as far as comparators to other jurisdictions and the like, and all of that information was covered as far as comparisons to other local government jurisdictions, and I think that the point was made when the report was initially presented that the time between adjustments to the rates was too long, but with too big of a jump could have negative impacts on our ability to deliver services at the rates that we're delivering them at. So I think that putting forward this number, there's been some increases that we already went above and beyond what staff had recommended as far as the initial recommendations, and then we look at this again to see whether or not there's another adjustment needs to be made before the end of this term.
Director Nicholson.
Given our performance isn't very good right now, I don't think we should go up too high, but I would agree that it should be reviewed in another year or two, because I think it should be a little bit higher if we can perform better.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. Oh, just a second. Sorry, I'm going to have the resolution read out. Mr. Barry, did you do that? You just did. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. I just want a lot of readouts. I don't want, you're retiring. I want you to be able to get your last as many words in as possible. UB2, Mr. Barry.
Application, this is for 1905 Wooden Road, development variance permit application, and that was also referred from the April 24th meeting, and there is a recommendation.
Looking to the committee. Director Nicholson? Are you moving the recommendation?
No, I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm wondering about this permit that the MOTI has provided in number 22, which says the house would need to be moved out of the right-of-way at the owner's expense. How would that work? Does MOTI, this is an MOTI issue, and they would require that? They would.
Mr. Anderson, could you help us here?
Madam Chair, interesting comment. Seems hard to believe. Once the house is there, I'm not sure what they're going to do to initiate the movement. Maybe the applicant has a comment on that one.
The applicant, would you wish to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I hope I could add something to that. Kind of what our idea was is that if we have the chance to build the house where it is, we can adjust it and build a structure that's easily movable should the extension of Wooden Road ever happen. So yeah, we could finish the house where it is, we would have a place to live, and then we would have enough capital in the house that we could move it should it ever have to be done. But in the meantime, it's not a problem to Ministry of Transportation, so hopefully it wouldn't be a problem for you guys as well.
Follow-up?
So then my follow-up is, what's going to protect if there's another owner? What is going to protect them so that they know what they're getting into?
Madam Chair, it usually comes down to due diligence when you're about to purchase a property. It's the owner or real estate's responsibility to review the property file to determine what's encumbrances and restrictions and zoning and whatever else is on the property. I'll admit a lot don't. It may be the most major purchase they've ever made, but a lot of people we find do not really look into the background information. Anyway, that's up to the applicant to figure that one out, or the prospective property owner.
you. I have Director Wilson and Director Salmon, and I'll go back to the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a little bit of guidance here, please. I would like to speak on, or make comments on this particular application, and I'm assuming that will be done at the discussion stage?
Well, we're discussing it right now.
Okay, I'll do it now then. I'm speaking in support of the application in this matter. I fully appreciate that the zoning bylaw 985 stipulates that stipulates a required setback. But in this case, I feel strongly that this board should show sympathy and compassion and allow this application to pass. We constantly hear of the problems regarding the lack of affordable housing, and yet we may be adding to that problem if we do not exercise discretion. I sincerely believe that this young couple did nothing wrong and are the victims of professional error. We should not add to that burden or punish them for that. I am therefore asking the board to approve the application, to exercise the discretionary powers that we enjoy, and to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And our sole jurisdiction is land use. The applicant, please, you wish to add something?
Yeah, to follow up, I appreciate your support. And also, we have met with some lawyers to seek their counsel on this and decide whether or not it's worth pursuing legal action on this. And we were advised that that would be a good choice given all of the circumstances. So we've started that as of last week as well. And to answer your question, Director Nicholson, we actually have no intention of ever selling this house, but I agree that it could happen. We don't know the future. But I think that anyone who would do their due diligence as we did would probably not buy this property. And so if we were going to sell it, I would intend to move the house before we were to sell it. I mean, and I'd be willing to put something like that in this agreement should the variance be approved.
Thank you so much. I have Director Salmon, Smith, and Acton. And you can be seated, thank you.
Yeah, and also support approving a variance for this. I did go and have a look at the property, and the encroachment is just the overhang of the eave is about 10 inches. The building itself is on the applicant's property. And it just, to me, when the property owner, in this case the MOTI next door, is given approval for the encroachment, I think we'd be overzealous to say no, we're not going to agree with MOTI. Last comment, though, and just a question maybe for Director Nicholson: would it be possible to require a note on title to mention the encroachment so that ensure any future owners would be aware of it?
Mr. Anderson.
These notices are put on title or on file, so if I'm not mistaken, yeah.
Is there a difference? Director Acton, I'll come to you in a second.
In order to, I can check the process for you. If there's a need, we could establish, if they don't go on title as is right now, we could check to see if a covenant is warranted.
Okay.
Follow up, Director Salmon?
I would support the variance in any case, but I think I appreciate finding out. It would be better if there was a note on title.
Perhaps what you could do is amend the motion to include a statement basically stating that if a covenant is warranted on site or on the property with regard to this application, that be done as part of the approval process.
Director Smith.
Of course, this application is a heart-wrencher because we all understand how young people are looking to have affordable housing. But I heard Mr. Anderson state due diligence, and I feel that it's important when you purchase a piece of property that you do due diligence and that you check where the survey lines are and you know exactly where they are, and then you proceed from there, and that's due diligence. Our job here is to make land use decisions based on zoning bylaws and not our heart. And it's very hard for us to sit here sometimes with our heart and also make decisions. but I do feel that we need to deny this, that we're just passing on a problem from this owner to the next owner, to one thing after the other. And due diligence is very, very important when people buy property and that they want to build a home. You need to know where your lines are, and you need to do due diligence.
Thank you, Director Smith. I have Director Acton and then back to Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can appreciate what everyone has said, and I agree with all the comments that have been discussed so far. But I would say that, you know, we're all here out of compassion for our community, and I think right now I'm standing with mostly compassion, so I would like to actually approve the variance. I did visit the site as well, and you could not build anywhere else on this. It's literally like a hill. It's a little hill at the end of a dead end, and it's kind of treacherous. And I cannot even see in the future that this road would ever be built, even 100 years from now. So if there could actually be something to protect the next landowner in 100 years when Jackson decides to sell it, I would like to add that a title, a comment. What Mr. Anderson said,
So
added to
Director
it.
Acton, you're making a resolution
A
currently. What is your
resolution
resolution, and do you
to-
have it printed out?
There's a Madam Chair, there are two options identified, and nobody's moved either yet.
Yes.
Number one is for denial, and number two is to be approved.
I would move number 2
So
to
that would,
approve the variance.
that would be that it be recommended to the board that the development variance permit application for 1905 Wooden Road to vary section 8.6B3 of zoning bylaw number 985 to reduce the exterior side parcel line setback for a residential use from 4.5 meters to 0 meters be approved.
With the title, with this file mentioned in the
Mr. Anderson, can you help us with the
Madam
addition?
Chair, and it should go on to state that a covenant be registered on title outlining the variance that has been approved.
Okay, that has been moved. Is there a seconder for that? And it's also been seconded, and I have a few speakers. I have Director Morrison and Director Wilson. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you also for Director Atkins' motion. I'm glad that there is a certain amount of the word compassion being brought in here, and just as a background, it's not absolutely necessary to stick to the letter of a regulation as we're doing here. We can vary things. For instance, maybe slightly off key, but I had a situation a few weeks ago where I had a conversation with a policeman at the side of the road who said I could issue you with a ticket for this, or I could issue you a ticket with that, and he actually went for the lesser of the two. That one act did more to change my opinions and my behavior than anything else. Then certainly if he'd given me the higher ticket, I would have probably not changed that much. But the very fact that he exercised discretion and showed that he had a heart made a lot of difference, and this is the case here as well. And that's why I'm supporting this application.
Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has been a very well-discussed file, and I'd like to ask you to call the question.
I actually would like to speak first. I will call the question, but I will be opposed to this. I am a very compassionate person, and I've been here for a while, and I really feel that when you follow the rules, and that's what the community has designed, that's what the zoning is for, that is what we complain about at this board with enforcement and doing things right and staying out of the gray, and it is about land use. It's not the personalities, and it's a very good rule to follow as what I try and do. So I will call the question on this unless there's more speakers. Director Kuhn.
I can't help it, but I have to say something to this.
Oh dear.
You were mentioning, Madam Chair, to stay out of the gray, and most of the times I agree with that. But we're not living in a world of black and white. We're living in a world with all kinds of colors and shades of gray and green and whatever. And the reason we as a board are needed to make decisions is to deal with the shades. If it was black and white, we wouldn't even be required. You just have your black and white Bible. It says, well, this is not allowed, bang, done. We wouldn't need a board. You just follow the Bible, that's it. The reason we are needed is to make decisions that are not straightforward. And that's what lawyers are all about. That's what everything in society is all about. You don't, because a society is not black and white. So anyway, enough said. This is what we're here to make decisions, and at times, yes, the decisions are maybe a little bit emotional, but we are humans, so you can't avoid emotions. As much as we try to stay on a rational basis, now and then the emotions do come in. So anyway, I'll be in favor of this.
No black and white for Director Kuhn. All righty. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on now to new business. We do have one new business item,
Sorry, which board will that come to?
May 23rd, 22nd, 1:30. Okay, there is, I have a report from the Parks that Thursday, this is for information for the Community Parks Advisory Commission Orientation Workshop. June 13th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Heritage Hall at Island Savings is scheduled for the Community Parks Advisory Commission Orientation Workshop. An earlier date is not possible due to the scheduling conflicts with the existing FCM. So the invitation to the Community Parks Advisory Commission will be sent out this week to the chairs with the request, the notice to be forwarded to all commission members. Electoral area directors will also receive the invitation to attend. So that is for information. Everyone's got that? Any questions on that information? Seeing none. Moving on now to question period. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to ask a question? Seeing none, we'll move on to, we do not have any closed. So motion to adjourn. Is there a seconder? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.